Hey, bread friends, I'm back. It's me, Ellen, your crazy baker chick, with a new gluten-free recipe for you. I have been working on getting a good gluten-free bread forever. You know that about a year ago I released a cinnamon roll recipe, and you would think that if I could do cinnamon rolls, I could make just a loaf of bread, but didn't quite have as much luck as I wanted. I've had a lot of bricks, a lot of fails, a lot of croutons and breadcrumbs for my friend who eats gluten-free, but I finally done it. I am the first to admit the process will be different than you think. We will not be using the gluten-free setting, and we will not be baking the bread in the machine. I can't get it to work that way. I'm not really a scientist. I just play one on TV, no. But anyway, I have figured it out, but it's a little different than you're going to think. It's a little more hands-on, but the end product, I promise you, will be worth it. My dear friend Kathy, who is my gluten-free guinea pig, says this bread and all of the flavor variations that I will get to you in the coming weeks is the best gluten-free bread she has ever tasted since she's gone gluten-free. So I hope it's as good. I hope you think that it's good as Kathy says it is. And then I think it's pretty good too. So without further ado, this is the basic gluten-free, quote unquote, white bread recipe. In other words, it's just a plain bread. It doesn't have other stuff in it. In upcoming weeks, I will be releasing a cinnamon raisin gluten-free, a sort of a faux rye bread gluten-free, and more to come after that. So let's get started. I have pre-measured my ingredients, but before we start, I want to show you the flour that I use for this. The brand is Caputo. It's from Italy, and that says Fiori Glute. I don't speak Italian. I don't know if that's right, but this is the gluten-free flour. This is the only one that I have had success with as far as bread goes. Now, I have used the King Arthur 1-to-1 in like chocolate chip cookies and brownies. That's worked fine. But for bread, this is the only one that I've had success with. So for this recipe, if you use a different gluten-free flour and it doesn't turn out, I'm sorry, you have to use this one guaranteed to work, or at least it works for me. So my ingredients are, and by the way, before I begin, I'm so sorry. If you're watching this video, here's the video screen. Underneath, usually on your left, under the video, there is a description of the video, and sometimes you have to expand it by clicking the word more. Under there will be the link to the recipe, and it's in PDF format. You can view it, you can download it, you can print it, and it will be all pretty and beautiful with my picture on the front. So that's where you're going to get the amounts of the ingredients. I'm not announcing the amounts of the ingredients here because I don't want you trying to write it down. You just click on the link later. We're just going to concentrate on process. So I have half and half. And if you're in another country, this is a dairy product that's half milk, half cream. You could probably use whole milk, but it might not be as rich. So that's half and half. 1 egg that I'm not really going to beat it as much as just break the yolk a little bit. And then in here is grapeseed oil and honey. If you put the grapeseed oil in first and the honey, most of it will come out easily and there isn't as much scraping. But I think it works better if I have done it at the last minute because I am having to scrape. So note to yourself, put the grapeseed oil in and then the honey and pour it right in because I am having to scrape, but that's okay. That's why I had the spatula here. And it is very important to get as much out as possible. America's Test Kitchen did a whole study on the success of recipes where they did or did not scrape out as much as possible from the measuring cup or weighing or whatever. and they did find it made a big difference. So I really suggest you do that. I'm just gonna put a little cold water in the egg dish. All right, that's done. So far we have half and half egg and grapeseed oil. You can use any neutral oil, neutral meaning it has no flavor or scent. You could use vegetable oil, canola oil, avocado oil, but you don't want to use olive oil because that has a flavor. You don't want that in this. I mean, maybe you do, but I wouldn't. You need a neutral oil, meaning it doesn't really have a flavor. Okay, so we have the half and half, the egg, the oil, the honey, so that's all the liquids. Now, this is optional, but I am going to put just a splash. I'm not measuring it, I'm just maybe a half teaspoon, whatever you want. Just a tiny little bit of vanilla extract. It gives it just a little more oomph, but you don't have to use it. Okay, so the next thing we're going to add is the flour. Now, buyer beware. This flour is so finely milled, it's very poofy, very poofy. So when I pour it in, I'm going to try and go slowly, but it usually goes, so just so you know. Yep, poofy. Even if can you see it poofing in clouds above? I can, I don't know if you can see that on the video. And now I'm going to just even this out. This flour is so fine. I can't even get it, it like sticks. See how, even if I do this, it doesn't completely come off my fingers. I'm just gonna rinse that off. And don't try pouring from the bag like I did yesterday because explosion. It was all over my pajama top. It was all over the counter. It was all over the floor. Don't do it. All right. So my next ingredient that I'm going to put in is the salt. I have it pre-weighed. Put that over there. I'm going to add the butter. And I've cut it up. And I just kind of line it up along the sides. Like that. And, oh, I guess I have to touch the flour again. I'm gonna make a little hole. Stick the yeast in. This is SAF, instant yeast in the gold label. Because I had over 40 grams of sugar, or in this case, honey, I needed to use the gold label yeast for sweeter doughs. Yes, you do need it. Yes, it does make a big difference. A lot of people say, why do I have to buy that extra yeast? Well, because it's important, because it helps your sweeter doughs get a better rise. If you don't use it, I'm sorry, you may not have as good a result. We're going to walk over to the bread machine now. And I have the Zojirushi Virtuoso Plus. My machine has a rest for, depending on the cycle, like on dough cycle, it has a 23-minute rest. So if yours starts kneading from the beginning, you're going to subtract 23 from what I'm about to tell you. Just keep that in your head. If yours starts kneading right away, subtract 23. So I'm going to start this, but I'm not going to use the gluten-free course. I can't make it work for this recipe. I am going to just simply use, on my machine, course 11, which is dough. So I'm going to set it for course 11 on a Zojirushi Virtuoso Plus, course 11. Press start, and I'm going to set a timer for 28 minutes. Hey Siri, set a timer for 28 minutes.
28 minutes, counting down.
In 28 minutes, usually this is where I say for non-gluten-free breads, guess what? It's time to check the dough ball. But we will not be checking the dough ball as much as scraping down the sides. But I will show you that in the next scene. But right now, we're going to go over to my sink area where I'm going to show you how to prepare the bread pan, the loaf pan. So what I do, sorry for the stuff in the sink, but you know, it's a kitchen. So I'm going to spray with nonstick spray. This is a Williams Sonoma brand Gold Touch. They tell you not to use Pam brand spray, just FYI, if you have this pan or if you're thinking of buying it. This is my favorite. So after I do this, I'm going to turn around over here. I have to warn my videographer. And I'm going to put a piece of parchment and I lay it over the top and do that. Kind of mush it in. Because when your bread is done, you know it won't stick, even though I sprayed nonstick and it's a nonstick pan. It's an extra insurance policy, and then you'll see me later just lift it right out to put it on the cooling rack, and it's just so much easier. So it's an insurance policy and it's ease, okay? So we will be back on video in about 26 minutes now, which will be just like that for you. And I'm going to show you the next step. So I forgot to explain about that 28 minutes first and the 23 minutes subtracting. On my machine, it rests on dough course 11, it rests for 23 minutes before it starts kneading. I like it to knead for 5 minutes before I check the dough. So 23 plus 5 is 28, I think. So if yours starts kneading immediately, you're going to need to warm your liquids, have your egg at room temperature, have your butter softened. I don't have to do that with my machine. So if your machine does not have a rest, all you're going to let your machine go for from this time it starts kneading is 5 minutes. That's it, 5 minutes. Okay, now you're going to see the next part. It's been 28 minutes. And I have a measuring cup with just a little bit of the grapeseed oil in it that I'm dipping this in. And what I'm going to do is just scrape down the flour. If this was a regular, not gluten-free bread dough, obviously you would see that the dough was too wet, but that's what it's going to look like. And it's absolutely fine. It's perfect. You don't need to touch it unless you feel like you need to help it along, but you really probably don't. If you were adding something to this, maybe. Okay, so now after that 28-minute time, you're gonna set another alarm for 16 minutes, or at the very beginning, you can set an alarm for 28 minutes and also another alarm, or timer rather, for 44 minutes. Because for this machine, we're gonna take it out just as the kneading finishes and the rise begins. We're not letting it rise in the machine. So at the 44-minute mark, or, and this is going to be confusing, I'm afraid, but look in the written recipe. If you don't have the rest, it wouldn't be 44 minutes, it would be 44 minus the 23-minute rest. Whatever that number is, I'm not doing it right now. So you check at 28 minutes, but you set an additional timer in the beginning. So you set 2 timers, 28 and 44, except for the rest, and I've already talked about that. I'm sorry if that's confusing. Please read the written recipe because I explain it very thoroughly in the written recipe, I promise. The main thing is, once it stops kneading and starts to rise, you take it out of the bread machine. That's it. So that's the main idea. When it stops kneading, do not let it rise in the bread machine. You turn off the bread machine, take it out, and I'll show you what's after that. All right, so it's just stopped kneading and started rising, so I'm going to cancel, unplug, and pull this out. Looks weird. All right, so this is a very sticky dough, and therefore I need oil. I'm not even dumping this onto my counter. I am plopping it right in like that. Getting as much of the dough, a little bit left in the bread pan. Okay, pardon me while I degoop my fingers and put water in the bread pan. It's very slippy slidey. To use technical terms, slippy slidey. I was a teacher, you know, that was the vocabulary, slippy slidey. Okay, so here's the fun part. This is, you know, if you have a small child, not a small child, but a child who likes to be icky, sticky, slippy, slidey. See how I'm oiling my hands? And I'm going to be basically pressing this into the pan. The challenge is to get it even and smooth. And it's hard for me to see if it's even going across, because since it's below the level, you know, of the top of the pan, I can't exactly bend down and do this, so just doing my best. And trying to make it smooth as I can. It's not going to be a beautiful, gorgeous, smooth top, but it'll be pretty nonetheless. Just you wait and see. All right. Videographer, does it look even from side to side? He says yes. Okay. Still feel like it could be lower on one side. I hope not. All right. It's not a frosted cake. But. All right. I'm going to stop fiddling around. You can study that look of bread for a second while I wash my greasy fingers. I will be as fast as I can. I need to go back and tell you that I should have said in the very beginning when I pressed the button on the bread machine to start, that right away you set a timer for 28 and a timer for 44 minutes at the same time. All right, we're going over to the oven. And I need proof on mine. Start. And proof should be about 85 degrees. If your oven does not have a proof, I didn't have this until a few months ago. If your oven does not have a proof, all you do is turn it on for 1 minute. I just use the lowest temperature, but any temperature probably doesn't really matter. Turn it on for 1 minute and 1 minute only. You must set a timer, turn it off or it'll get too hot. The ideal proofing temperature is 85 degrees. So I'm going to put this in here to rise, and this needs to rise for 1 hour. So 1 hour. Whoops. Stop sliding. Oh, gosh. And 0 minutes. So that's going to rise for 1 hour. And then after that, I'll just egg wash and bake it. See you when it rises. We're back. Woo! So you can see that it rose pretty nicely. And I got it pretty smooth. It will crack a little bit. It actually, when it bakes, gets kind of an interesting texture in the crust. So here I have an egg wash. This is not a must-do. It just makes it look a little prettier. So it's 1 beaten egg with a splash of water. Some people say a teaspoon of water. Some people say a tablespoon of water. I literally put my hand under the faucet and go like it's about probably a couple of teaspoons. And I also do a sprinkle of salt. I learned that from King Arthur. So once I've beaten the egg, very, very gently, I'm having the lightest touch that you could ever imagine. You can't really tell that I'm touching the bread obviously, but I'm just having a really light touch, patting as much as brushing. So I have the oven heating to 350 degrees, and that's what the temperature is that I want to bake it at. And it will take 40-ish to 45 minutes to get to 200 degrees internal temperature using my handy dandy instant read thermometer. Now, I'm just going to leave it like this, but if you wanted to, you could, you could sprinkle salt on top, you could put seeds on top, you could put sugar and cinnamon on top, you could do whatever you want, or you could do absolutely nothing, including not even egg wash. If you don't want to, you do the egg wash if you don't want to bother. The egg wash makes it look a pretty brown and has a little bit of glisten to it. It's not a must, okay? So this is gonna sit here until the oven heats to 350. I'm gonna put it in and set a timer on the oven for 40 minutes, but I'm going to set a timer on my Apple Watch or on my phone for 30 minutes because I might need at that point to tent it with a piece of foil because I don't want the top to over brown. A lot of times the bread looks done because it's a beautiful golden brown on top, but then when you take your temperature, it's not even close to done on the inside, and that's why you need an instant read thermometer. They work like this. You stick it down in, and it tells you the temperature. So that's why I get the foil ready, and you have to get that 200 degrees internal temperature, 195 to 200. But you don't want the brown on top to become black. Okay, so I will show you when it's done baking. I just want to show you the oven is not quite heated, so I haven't baked it yet, but it's cracked a little more. This just seems to be typical of gluten-free. Every gluten-free bread I think I've ever made has cracked like that. Doesn't hurt anything. And it's risen a little bit more in the, 10 minutes or so that it's been out. And oh, my oven is ready. I'm going to pop it in. I want to remind you, it's so weird when I do in camera facing mode and I'm looking in the wrong place. It's very weird. Sorry about that. So I want to remind you about people and their gluten-free diets. If someone has celiac disease or has a violent or life-threatening allergy or intolerance to gluten, you have to be very careful. If your kitchen contains things with gluten, if you use your bread machine to make regular bread that has gluten in it, and someone is that sensitive, you cannot make them bread. You would have to get dedicated bread, at least bread pan, utensils that you only used for gluten-free, and your kitchen would have to be absolutely spotless, like alcohol or 409 wiped down. And that's at the very least, depending on their comfort level and yours. If they are gluten intolerant, meaning they might get a little upset stomach or, pardon the expression, gassy, the cross-contamination issue is less of a concern. My friend Kathy, that I bake gluten-free goods for, and my friend Steve, that I bake gluten-free goods for, they don't have celiac. They but they have to eat gluten-free diets because they feel better or because they have certain symptoms that gluten causes them to have that are not nice. So please understand what you are dealing with, who you are baking for when you bake gluten-free products. Very, very important. Thanks. It's been 30 minutes. Do you see how it's a beautiful brown? Looks like it could be done, but it is not. It is only about 160 degrees. So I'm going to tent it with the foil. For anyone not familiar with tenting, I just lay the foil on top and I have about 8 minutes to go on my 40-minute timer. It may or may not be done by then. I will let you know. It took 45 minutes for the bread to get to about 196 degrees, so I took it out, and now it needs to cool before I can show you what it looks like on the inside. But if you haven't seen this parchment trick before, you probably have. But just in case, this is why I do it. And ta-da! Then you can get your bread loaf pan soaking. And in a few minutes, when it's not so hot, I'll just kind of pull out the parchment and shove the bread off. But that is the finished loaf of bread. It rose and baked absolutely beautifully. And in about 3 hours, when it's nice and cool, we will cut it, and I'll show you what it looks like on the inside. And that'll be it. We're back. While the bread was cooling, I had a workout, so that's why I'm in my gym clothes and slippers. Barbie slippers. Not really, they're just pink. All right, we're gonna cut this bread open. Drum roll, please. Brrr. Look at that. I'm gonna cut one more slice. Probably cut it a little too thin, but okay. So I want you to see that it is soft. I don't know if you can see that it's soft. It really is. It's soft and fluffy. I'm gonna give it a little teeny taste. I always used to put too much in my mouth and I'd be, so just, It is actually amazingly good. And my husband would add on 4 gluten-free bread. But honestly, this somehow, I don't know how, has less of that signature gluten-free flavor. I don't even know how to describe it, but if you try eating gluten-free things, you will know what I'm talking about. There's a certain, almost like a grainy taste. I don't know. Anyway, this tastes really good. This is your basic, we'll call it a gluten-free white bread. I mean, it has egg in it, so it's not white, but it's really delicious. Nice and soft. So as with all my breads, I store them in a thick plastic bag for homemade bread that you can get on Amazon. I'll try to remember to put the link below in the description. And don't forget how to find the recipe. Look below the video. Here's the video on YouTube, but right about here, there's a description that you expand. Click on more or whatever it is on your device, and you will see the PDF link to the recipe. Thank you for watching. Oh, and more gluten-free recipes to come very soon.